The plasma rifle aimed at Dr. Morgan Blake's forehead was definitely not mentioned in the travel guide. "Okay," she said, hands raised in what she hoped was the universal gesture for, "Please don't vaporize me. I'm going to take a wild guess that this isn't the tourist information center." The Krillian soldier's mandibles clicked in what could have been amusement or dinner plans. Behind him, 5 more of his kind blocked the cantina entrance, their insectoid faces reflecting the bar's neon signs in distinctly unfriendly ways. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city block. Morgan had walked into the wrong establishment. Again. "Human," the lead soldier hissed through his translator. "You are in violation of Sector 19 species restrictions." "Species restrictions?" Morgan glanced around the suddenly silent bar. Every alien patron was either staring at her or quietly reaching for the exits. The sign outside said, "All species welcome in 12 languages." Outdated signage. Humans are prohibited from this sector without proper escort. And the penalty for improper tourism is immediate termination. Morgan blinked. Well, that's a 1-star Yelp review waiting to happen. The plasma rifle's charging whine filled the air. Around the cantina, other patrons were placing bets with the casual interest of beings who had seen this particular show before. The odds board currently showed her lasting approximately 14 seconds. Then, something growled. It wasn't the kind of growl that suggested mild annoyance. This was the sound that evolution had specifically designed to make every other creature's hindbrain scream "predator" in 17 different panic frequencies. It came from the cantina's darkest corner, where shadows had apparently been hiding something much larger and more dangerous than expected. The Krillian soldiers spun around, weapons tracking toward the sound. Their confidence evaporated faster than water in a vacuum. "Vexkai," the lead soldier said, his voice losing its authoritative edge. "This matter does not concern the pack." "Doesn't it?" The voice that emerged from the shadows sounded like gravel being processed through a blender made of chainsaws. A figure stepped into the light, and Morgan understood why the betting pools had suddenly gone silent. The alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, covered in midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His face was lupine but wrong in ways that suggested evolution had taken several creative liberties with the basic canine blueprint. Golden eyes held intelligence that was definitely not animal level, and when he smiled, the teeth were designed for purposes Morgan preferred not to contemplate. He was also, she realized with the detached observation of someone whose day had already gone completely sideways, absolutely magnificent. "The human is under pack protection," he said, each word deliberate and final. The lead Krillians' mandibles clicked frantically. "Alpha Vexkai, we were not informed of any bonding claim. You are informed now." Vexkai moved with liquid grace, positioning himself between Morgan and the weapons. Up close, she could see scars crisscrossing his arms and torso, old battles won and survived. His presence filled the space like a storm front about to break. "Stand aside, Alpha. Human termination is council mandate." The growl that emerged from Vexkai's throat made his earlier sound seem like a lullaby. "Touch her, and you face me." The temperature in the cantina seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several patrons were now actively fleeing, leaving credits scattered on tables in their haste to avoid whatever was about to happen. "This is not wise," the Krillian soldier said, but his weapon wavered uncertainly. "Wisdom is for species that survive through committee meetings," Vexkai replied. "We survive through loyalty." Morgan found her voice. "Excuse me. Not to interrupt what I'm sure is a very meaningful cultural exchange, but could someone explain why I apparently need protection from a termination order I didn't know existed?" Vexkai glanced back at her, those golden eyes holding something that might have been amusement. "You walked into Lykan territory without understanding pack law. I walked into a bar for directions. There's a significant difference. Not here." The Krillians were having a rapid consultation in clicks and hisses. Morgan caught enough through her translator to understand they were debating whether fighting a Lykan Alpha was worth following orders. The math apparently wasn't working out in their favor. "Alpha Vexkai," the lead soldier said finally. "The council will not overlook this interference." "Tell them." More clicking. If the human violates sector law again, she won't. How can you guarantee? Because she'll be with the pack. Morgan raised her hand. Sorry, when exactly did I join a pack? Because I feel like that's something that should have come up in conversation. Vexkai's attention returned to her, and she felt a strange shiver at being the focus of that predatory intelligence. You are bonded now. Pack law applies. Bonded to what, exactly? Me. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Around the cantina, the remaining patrons made the sort of noises that suggested this was either the most romantic thing they'd witnessed all year, or the prelude to spectacular violence. The Krillian soldiers lowered their weapons with obvious reluctance. This matter is not concluded, Alpha. It never is. They filed out, mandibles clicking what Morgan's translator unhelpfully identified as either frustration or recipe suggestions. The cantina slowly returned to normal, though she noticed the betting pools had shifted to whether she'd survive being claimed by a Lykan Alpha. Morgan turned to face Vexkai. Okay, so, just to clarify, you just declared me your property to save me from execution? Yes, without asking. Asking implies choice. You had none. Right. Morgan sat down heavily in the nearest chair. And this bonding thing, is that like a temporary protective custody situation or more of a permanent lifestyle change? Vexkai's smile revealed entirely too many teeth. Pack bonds are for life. Of course they are. Morgan rubbed her temples. This morning I was a xenobiologist trying to catch a transport to the research station. Now I'm apparently married to a 9-foot space wolf who just declared war on local law enforcement on my behalf. The pack declared nothing. I stated fact. What fact? That anyone who threatens my mate faces me. Morgan stared at him. The casual certainty in his voice suggested this wasn't a negotiation tactic or bluff. It was simply how the universe worked from his perspective. As if summoned by his words, shapes began emerging from the cantina's darker corners. More Lykans, each impressive in their own right, but all deferring to the Alpha who had just claimed a human as pack. Morgan counted 12 of them. 12 very large, very dangerous-looking aliens, who were now apparently her extended family. Oh, she said quietly, watching them form a protective circle around her and Vexkai. This is either going to be really interesting or really fatal. Both, Vexkai agreed, and his smile suggested he was looking forward to finding out which came first. The Galactic enforcement fleet arrived with all the subtlety of a meteor shower having an identity crisis. 6 heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace above the trade station, their weapons already charged and targeting systems painting everything in sight with the cheerful glow of imminent annihilation. The message they broadcast was simple, direct, and in 23 languages. Surrender the human female immediately, or face consequences. Morgan watched through the cantina's reinforced windows as the ships took formation. Well, that escalated quickly. They move fast when bureaucracy is threatened, Vexkai observed. He stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his massive frame. The rest of the pack had positioned themselves strategically around the establishment, turning the dive bar into something resembling a fortress. What bureaucracy? I accidentally walked into the wrong building. You accidentally triggered a diplomatic crisis. The cantina's communications system crackled to life. Human-designated Morgan Blake, you are in violation of Galactic Species Interaction Protocol 31. Submit to immediate extraction. Morgan activated the response channel. This is Dr. Blake. I'm not sure what protocol I violated, but I'm pretty sure wandering into a bar doesn't qualify as an international incident. You have illegally bonded with a Class 4 restricted species. I was claimed by a Lykan Alpha to prevent my execution by your people. If that's illegal, you're legal. System has some serious priority issues. A different voice came through the speakers. Older, more bureaucratic, and carrying the particular tone that suggested years of committee meetings had drained all joy from its existence. Dr. Blake, this is Counselor Vexthek of the Galactic Species Council. The situation is more complex than you comprehend. Then enlighten me. Lykan pack bonds with non-Lykan species have been prohibited for 93 years following the Kepler Station incident. Morgan glanced at Vexkai, who had gone very still. What was the Kepler Station incident? A human mining operation requested Lykan protection from raiders, Vexkai said quietly. The pack bonded with the entire colony. That sounds positive? The colony became the most feared military force in 4 sectors. Raiders stopped operating within 100 light-years. Morgan frowned. Still sounds positive. The Council classified it as an illegal military buildup, threatening galactic stability. Ah. The pieces were clicking together. They're not afraid of humans bonding with Lykans. They're afraid of what happens when humans learn pack tactics. The human shows understanding, rumbled Kess, one of Vexkai's lieutenants. This is why the Alpha chose wisely. I chose nothing, Morgan protested. I asked for directions to the spaceport. You accepted pack protection. I accepted not being murdered by trigger-happy bureaucrats. Same thing. The communication array buzzed again. Dr. Blake, you have 30 standard minutes to submit to extraction. Failure to comply will result in the station being classified as a hostile military installation. Morgan stared at the speaker. You're threatening to attack a civilian station because I'm standing next to some aliens who offered me protection? The pack bond represents an existential threat to galactic order. How? Silence. Counselor Vexthek? How exactly does me being here threaten galactic order? More silence. Vexkai's expression had shifted to something that might generously be called amusement. They cannot explain what they do not understand. What do you mean? Pack bonds are not treaties or contracts. They cannot be dissolved by committee or legislated away. His golden eyes met hers. They are matters of instinct, choice, and biology. Biology? Your species triggers our bonding protocols in ways the Council finds inconvenient. Morgan felt heat creep up her neck. Triggers them how exactly? Human behavioral patterns, stress responses, and protective instincts align perfectly with Lykan pack dynamics. You naturally exhibit what we recognize as mate-worthy characteristics. Mate-worthy characteristics. Intelligence, courage, loyalty to allies, defiance of unjust authority. Vexkai's smile showed teeth. Very attractive traits. Oh. The communication system crackled again. 25 minutes remaining, Dr. Blake. This is getting ridiculous, Morgan muttered. She activated the channel again. Counselor Vexithek, what specific law am I supposed to have broken? Galactic Species Interaction Protocol 31 prohibits unsanctioned bonding between humans and pack-oriented species. Define unsanctioned. Any bonding not approved by the Council through proper channels. And the process for obtaining approval? A pause. There is no established process. Morgan blinked. You made pack bonding illegal without creating a legal way to make it legal? The law was designed to prevent such bonding entirely, but not to handle situations where it happens anyway. Correct. Your government, Morgan said to Vexkai, is run by idiots. This surprises you? Before Vexkai could respond, new contacts appeared on the station's sensor displays. Not galactic enforcement vessels. These moved wrong, too organic, too fluid for standard military craft. What are those? Morgan asked. Hegemony ships, Vexkai said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. This just became complicated. The new arrivals broadcast their own message. Attention, all vessels. The human female has been claimed under hegemony breeding protocols. Surrender her immediately to prevent interspecies incident. Morgan's jaw dropped. Breeding protocols? The hegemony are territorial about potential mates for their ruling caste, Vexkai explained. Human females apparently trigger their reproduction instincts as well. How many species want to mate with humans? Morgan asked incredulously. More than the Council finds comfortable, Kess replied. The communication channels exploded into multilingual arguments as Galactic Enforcement, the Lykan Pack, and hegemony forces began what could charitably be called negotiations, and more accurately be described as three-way territorial dispute with the potential for mass annihilation. "This is Fleet Commander Zeldrak of the Hegemony 3rd Battle Group," came a new voice, deep and carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "The human female will be remanded to our custody for proper breeding assessment." "Like hell she will," Vexkai growled, loud enough for the communication system to pick up. "Alpha Vexkai, the Hegemony has prior claim under Conquest Protocol 12. The human is pack-bonded. Your protocols are irrelevant. Your pack bond is illegal under Galactic law. Your breeding protocols violate 17 sentient rights conventions." Morgan listened to the argument escalating around her and felt laughter bubbling up in her chest. 3 different military forces were having a custody battle over her in open space, using legal precedents that apparently contradicted each other in fundamental ways. "This is insane," she said. "This is Tuesday," Kess replied philosophically. 15 minutes, Dr. Blake," came the counselor's voice again. "Choose now or face the consequences." Morgan looked around the cantina at the pack of aliens who had claimed her as family, listened to the space battle brewing overhead, and made a decision that would probably either save the day or get everyone killed. She activated the communication array one final time. "Attention all vessels. This is Dr. Morgan Blake, apparently the most popular human in the galaxy right now. I have a proposal." The argument stopped. "I'll go with whoever can answer one simple question. What happens when you try to force a human to do something they don't want to do?" The silence that followed was broken by Vexkai's low chuckle. "Oh," he said softly. "They are not prepared for this conversation." The first news drone arrived 18 minutes after Morgan's challenge went out over open frequencies. By the time the standoff entered its second hour, there were 43 media vessels from 16 different news networks maintaining what they optimistically called safe distance from the three-way military crisis. The Galactic News Network had deployed their premium disaster coverage package, complete with expert analysts who kept using words like unprecedented and potentially civilization-ending. "Well," Morgan observed, watching the growing media circus through the cantina windows, "at least when this goes horribly wrong, it'll be properly documented." "Fame is overrated," Vexkai replied, though his attention was focused on the tactical displays showing ship positions. The Lykan pack had called in reinforcements, organic vessels that moved like living things and confused the hell out of everyone's targeting systems. "Breaking news," announced a cheerful reporter's voice over the emergency broadcast frequency. "We're here live at what experts are calling the first documented interspecies custody battle in galactic history. The human female at the center of this crisis has just challenged 3 major military forces to explain what happens when humans don't want to cooperate." "Turn that off," Morgan muttered. "The question has apparently caused significant confusion among alien leadership," the reporter continued with obvious glee. "We're now getting reports that emergency xenopsychology committees are being convened across known space to address what officials are calling the human problem." "The human problem?" Morgan's voice rose several octaves. "Dr. Blake," came Counselor Vexthek's voice through the cantina's communication system. "We have assembled our finest experts to address your question." "Oh, this should be good." "According to our xenopsychology division, forced compliance typically results in submission behaviors in most sentient species." Morgan looked around at the pack of Lykans surrounding her, all of whom were making expressions that she was learning to recognize as barely contained laughter. "Typically," she said into the communicator. "What about atypically? Some species exhibit mild resistance behaviors, such as vocal, protests, passive non-compliance, occasional property damage." Vexkai made a sound that was definitely a snort of amusement. Around the cantina, his packmates were grinning with too many teeth. "Counselor," Morgan said sweetly, "have you ever studied human history? Our databases contain extensive records of human civilization. Then you know what happened when various groups tried to force humans to comply with things they didn't want to do?" A pause. "Our records indicate occasional social unrest." "Occasional social unrest," Morgan repeated. Is that what you call the American Revolution? The French Revolution? The Warsaw Uprising? 2 world wars? Those were isolated incidents of political instability. Counselor, humans don't do mild resistance. When we decide we don't like something, we burn it down and start over. It's kind of our thing. The silence that followed was broken by Fleet Commander Zeldrak of the Hegemony Forces. The human female exaggerates her species' capabilities for intimidation purposes. Does she? Vexkai's voice carried clearly across the communication channel. Tell me, Commander, how did first contact between humans and the Hegemony proceed? That is classified information. It was a military disaster, Vexkai continued cheerfully. Human colony ships encountered your battle fleet. You demanded their surrender. Standard conquest protocol was followed. They rammed your flagship with a cargo hauler. Morgan raised an eyebrow. We did what now? The colony ships were unarmed civilian vessels, Vexkai explained. Faced with superior firepower and impossible odds, they improvised. Improvised how? They turned their ships into kinetic weapons, took out 3 Hegemony dreadnoughts before the rest of your fleet retreated. That's... Morgan paused, considering. Actually, that does sound like something we'd do. It was terrorism, Commander Zeldrak protested. It was Tuesday, Morgan corrected. Humans don't have a concept of acceptable losses when it comes to freedom. We'll crash our ships into yours, blow up our own facilities to deny them to enemies, and fight to the last person standing if necessary. Surely that's an exaggeration, Councillor Vexthek said, though his voice had lost some of its bureaucratic confidence. Counselor, my species fought a war for 4 years that killed millions of people because we couldn't agree on whether slavery was morally acceptable. We've launched nuclear weapons at ourselves. We once had a war that lasted 100 years because someone insulted someone else's cousin. The human speaks truth, confirmed Kess. Their species is enthusiastic about conflict resolution. We prefer the term determined, Morgan said. The news networks were having a field day. Expert xenopsychologists are now reviewing human historical records, the reporter announced breathlessly. Preliminary analysis suggests that forced compliance with human subjects may result in what one expert termed catastrophic resistance responses, including but not limited to property destruction, infrastructure sabotage, and what appears to be an innate human tendency to die before surrendering. Well, Morgan said to Vexkai, at least they're learning. That's when the Hegemony forces decided to settle the matter through direct action. The first plasma barrage lit up space like the galaxy's most violent fireworks display. The Hegemony 3rd Battle Group opened fire on both the Galactic enforcement vessels and the Lykan ship simultaneously, apparently operating on the theory that eliminating the competition would simplify negotiations. And there's the shooting, Morgan observed as the station's defensive shields flared under impact. Right on schedule. The Galactic enforcement fleet returned fire immediately, their military doctrine apparently not including provisions for being attacked by potential allies during diplomatic negotiations. Energy weapons turned the space around the station into a light show that was probably visible from 3 systems away. The Lykan vessels responded with weapons that didn't show up properly on sensors, organic technology that adapted to incoming fire, and responded with something that looked like liquid lightning. The media drones scrambled for better camera angles while maintaining what they hoped was minimum safe distance from the expanding battle. This is unprecedented, the news reporter was practically shouting over the sounds of explosions. 3 major military forces are engaged in active combat over custody of a single human female. The diplomatic implications alone could reshape galactic politics for centuries. Could they maybe reshape them more quietly? Morgan asked, as the station shuddered under another impact. Commander Zeldrak's voice cut through the weapons fire. Alpha Vexkai, face me in single combat for the right to the human. Gladly, Vexkai snarled. Wait, what? Morgan grabbed his arm. Single combat? Hegemony tradition. Personal challenge supersedes fleet action. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It will prevent civilian casualties. Morgan looked around the cantina at the dozen Lykans who had claimed her as pack. then at the space battle raging outside, then at the news drones documenting every moment of what was apparently becoming the most watched crisis in galactic history. "Fine," she said, "but I have conditions." "You don't get to set conditions," Commander Zeldrak replied. "Single combat determines ownership rights." "Ownership?" Morgan's voice went deadly quiet. "Did you just say ownership?" The sudden silence from both Vexicai and his pack should have been a warning sign to anyone paying attention. Under hegemony law, contested mates become property of the victor in ritual combat. "Nobody," Morgan interrupted, her voice carrying across the communication channel with crystalline clarity, "owns me." She stood up, walked to the cantina's central communication array, and activated every frequency simultaneously. Military channels, news networks, emergency broadcasts, and what appeared to be several diplomatic hotlines. "Attention everyone currently shooting at each other in my general vicinity," she announced. "I am Dr. Morgan Blake, xenobiologist, human female, and apparently the most misunderstood person in the galaxy. I have an announcement." The weapons fire gradually ceased as everyone focused on whatever the human was about to say. "I am not property. I am not a breeding resource. I am not a diplomatic token to be traded between governments." Her voice carried the particular edge that had made graduate students flee her laboratory when experiments went wrong. "I am a human being with agency, opinions, and a really impressive capacity for holding grudges." She paused for effect, letting that sink in. "Now, you have two choices. You can continue this ridiculous battle and find out exactly why my species has never been successfully conquered by anyone, including ourselves. Or you can accept that maybe, just maybe, the person you're fighting over should have a say in the matter." The silence stretched across 3 fleets and 43 news networks. "Commander Zeldrak," she continued, "your single combat challenge is declined. Not because Alpha Vexkai won't fight you, but because I don't recognize your authority to challenge anyone over my personal autonomy. Counselor Vexthek, your extraction order is denied. I am not violating any laws by existing while human in alien space. And, Alpha Vexkai," she looked at him directly, "your pack bond is appreciated, but if you think it gives you the right to make decisions for me, you're about to discover why human females are considered the most dangerous subspecies on their planet." The pack leader's golden eyes met hers, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not fear, but recognition. "The human," he said quietly, "is not pack." Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "The human is Alpha." The collective intake of breath from 43 news networks, 3 military fleets, and 1 very confused Lykan pack was audible even through vacuum, and that's when everything really went sideways. The declaration that Morgan was Alpha, not pack, sent ripples through the galactic communication networks faster than light-speed travel. Within minutes, emergency xenobiology committees were being convened on 12 core worlds. Within an hour, the Galactic Species Council was calling an emergency session. Within 2 hours, every major military force in known space was quietly reassessing their human contact protocols and having what could charitably be called mild panic attacks. "I'm sorry," Morgan said, looking around at the suddenly very attentive alien faces surrounding her. "Did everyone just have a collective existential crisis because I told you I make my own decisions? You don't understand." Counselor Vexthek's voice had lost all bureaucratic composure. "Our xenobiology databases classify humans as a pack-oriented species with strong hierarchical submission patterns. Based on what data? Initial contact reports, cultural analysis, behavioral assessments." Morgan laughed, not the polite chuckle of diplomatic amusement, but the genuinely entertained sound of someone who had just realized the scope of a massive misunderstanding. "Let me guess. Your first contact teams met with human government officials, military commanders, and diplomatic representatives, people whose job it is to follow orders and work within established power structures." "Correct. And from that, you concluded that humans are naturally submissive. The evidence supported hierarchical compliance behaviors. You met the humans whose job it is to be diplomatic, and concluded that's how all humans behave." Morgan shook her head. That's like meeting a librarian and assuming all humans whisper. Vexkai was watching her with those golden eyes, and she could see understanding dawning. What do humans do when they're not being diplomatic? We explore. We experiment. We question everything. We take apart perfectly functional systems just to see how they work. We argue with our own government so regularly that rebellion is considered a fundamental right. This is why, Commander Zeldrak's voice came through the communication array, human colonies have proven impossible to govern through standard hegemony protocols. You tried to conquer human colonies? Multiple attempts. Each time the local human population would accept our authority initially, then systematically dismantle our administrative structures. How? They kept asking questions. Why this regulation? Who decided this policy? What happens if we ignore this rule? They treated every law as a suggestion and every authority figure as someone who needed to prove their qualifications. Morgan grinned. Sounds about right. But that's impossible, Counselor Vexthek protested. Stable civilization requires hierarchical structure. Authority must be respected for society to function. Says who? Basic sociological principles. Galactic civilization is built on species recognizing and accepting their place in the natural order. And what's the natural order? The silence that followed was the kind of silence that usually preceded either enlightenment or complete societal collapse. Species are classified by dominance hierarchies, the counselor explained carefully, as if speaking to a particularly slow student. Apex predators at the top, prey species at the bottom, with various levels of authority in between. Where do humans rank in this system? Mid-tier pack species, cooperative but submissive to proper authority. Morgan looked around the cantina at the Lykan pack, all of whom were making expressions that suggested they were watching someone defuse a bomb by hitting it with a hammer. Counselor, what makes a species an apex predator? Superior physical capabilities, advanced hunting instincts, natural dominance behaviors. How many apex predator species have achieved interstellar travel? A pause. 17. How many mid-tier species? 43. How many prey species? 112. Morgan nodded thoughtfully. And how many species in your galactic civilization have actually conquered other planets through military force? That's not relevant to classification. How many? 31 confirmed conquest species. How many of those are classified as apex predators? Another pause, longer this time. 12. How many are mid-tier pack species? 18. And how many are prey species? 1. Which prey species? The silence stretched until Commander Zeldrak answered reluctantly. Humans. Morgan let that hang in the air for a moment. So, according to your classification system, the most successful conquest species in galactic history is a mid-tier pack animal that's supposed to be naturally submissive. There must be extenuating circumstances. There are. You classified us wrong. The news networks were having the time of their lives. Breaking. Xenobiology experts are conducting emergency reviews of human classification protocols, the reporter announced. Preliminary findings suggest that what we've been calling a mid-tier pack species may actually represent a completely unknown category of social organization. Dr. Velsa, the Galactic Council's chief xenobiologist, joined the communication channel with the breathless excitement of a scientist watching their life's work explode in real time. Dr. Blake, our models suggest that true apex predator species cannot achieve large-scale cooperation due to inherent territorial conflicts. How do humans manage both dominance behaviors and complex social organization? We don't manage it, Morgan replied. We are it. Explain. Morgan stood up, and every alien in the cantina, and probably watching through news feeds across the galaxy, focused on her with predatory attention. You've been thinking about hierarchy wrong. You assume someone has to be on top and someone has to be on bottom. But humans don't work that way. We're all alphas. That's impossible, Dr. Velsa protested. Multiple alpha personalities in close proximity results in constant conflict. Only if you're thinking like aliens. Morgan walked to the center of the cantina, where she could address everyone directly. Human social structures don't work through submission to authority. They work through negotiated cooperation between equals. Equals? Every human considers themselves the protagonist of their own story. We cooperate when it benefits us, rebel when it doesn't, and change the rules when we don't like them. We don't follow leaders because they outrank us. We follow them because we choose to. But without hierarchical authority, how do you maintain order? We don't. We maintain chaos that's roughly pointed in the same direction. Vexkai made a sound that was definitely laughter. This is why the pack bond triggered, he said. You weren't exhibiting mate behaviors. You were exhibiting alpha recognition signals. And I responded by recognizing you as an alpha too, Morgan realized. Equals choosing to cooperate. The human, Vexkai announced to his pack, is not mate. The human is partner. The distinction apparently mattered, because the pack's entire body language shifted. Instead of protective positioning around a claimed female, they moved into formation behind a recognized leader. This changes everything, Dr. Velza whispered. This changes everything, Commander Zeldrak agreed, but his voice held what might have been terror. This changes everything, Counselor Vexthek confirmed, and he sounded like someone watching his entire worldview collapse in real time. Morgan looked around at the assembled aliens, military commanders, scientists, bureaucrats, and warriors, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to panic. What exactly does it change? She asked. If humans are not a pack species seeking hierarchy, Dr. Velsa said slowly, but rather a species of individual alphas who choose to cooperate, then every human contact we've made has been a negotiation between equals that we've been treating as submission to authority, Commander Zeldrak continued. Which means we've been accidentally insulting them for decades, Counselor Vexthek finished. And humans, Vexkai added with something that sounded suspiciously like pride, do not forgive insults easily. The communication channels erupted as the implications spread. Military forces were requesting new engagement protocols. Diplomatic corps were demanding emergency cultural sensitivity training. Several species were quietly reconsidering their entire governmental structures. Morgan watched the chaos with detached amusement. So what happens now? Now, came a new voice over the communication array. Older, more authoritative, carrying the weight of someone who had been making decisions for centuries. We adapt. Who is this? Morgan asked. High Counselor Thresh of the Galactic Species Council. Dr. Blake, I believe we need to discuss renegotiating humanity's place in galactic civilization. What kind of renegotiation? The kind where we acknowledge that what we've been calling diplomatic relations have actually been mismanaged. Morgan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they held all the cards in a game where the other players had been cheating for decades. High Counselor, she said sweetly, I think that conversation is going to be very interesting. As news of the revelation spread across the galaxy, one thing became crystal clear to every species watching. The balance of power had just shifted in ways no one had anticipated. Because the day you discover that what you thought was a species of followers is actually a species of leaders, everything you knew about the universe stops making sense. And in a cantina on a forgotten trade station, surrounded by a pack of alien warriors who now followed her lead, Morgan Blake smiled and began planning humanity's future in a galaxy that was finally ready to treat them as equals. The last thing recorded by the news drones before they were politely asked to leave was High Counselor Thresh whispering to his aide, Alert all planetary governors. We need to review every human colony in our territory. Why, sir? Because we just realized we haven't been governing them. They've been allowing us to think we were.